Hi guys, so the SNP is holding its party conference at the moment, and they invited Ian Blackford, who's the leader of the SNP in Westminster, to deliver a speech. So let's hear what he had to say, and I'll break down some of the things that he talks about.
Our First Minister has won the respect of many for the way she has led our government and our country through this crisis. In doing so, our government, our Parliament, has reaffirmed our faith in our institutions, in our governance and in our nation. Over 2 decades of devolution, a majority of people have come to the simple but powerful conclusions. Decisions about Scotland are best made in Scotland.
So this is true. The majority of people are supportive of devolution in Scotland. Even a sizable number of Conservative Party supporters in Scotland are supportive of devolution. They understand that it's a valuable tool for the people of Scotland. Now, this is to be contrasted with the Conservative Party in Westminster. There's a growing number of MPs in Westminster who want to do away with devolution, and they were on board when Boris Johnson described devolution as a disaster. Now, of course, Boris attempted to clarify or qualify what he had said by saying that it was not devolution, it was the SNP. But I think the more Boris Johnson talks, the more he helps the SNP and the independence movement.
It is little wonder that we have come to that verdict when we compare the record of the 2 parliaments over that period. Over the past 20 years, Westminster has imposed an extreme Brexit.
Okay, so about Brexit, of course, the Scottish people voted against Brexit, and there's a growing number of support in Scotland for rejoining the European Union. Now, there are, of course, Brexiteers in Scotland who also strangely want independence. I still have have a problem getting my head around how those people tick. But there are people who I think basically want to turn Scotland into a hermit nation, a bit like the Brexiteers in England. But the majority of people, it seems, want Scotland to eventually rejoin the European Union.
An illegal war, £9,000 tuition fees, the Windrush scandal, the rape clause, the bedroom tax, and a decade of Tory austerity cuts which have pushed millions of people into poverty.
So, of course, what he's doing here is he's contrasting the Tory-led and also Labour-led Parliament in Westminster, and he's going to compare it with the Scottish Parliament. What he's trying to do is he's trying to paint a picture of 2 nations and 2 parliaments. Now, he's not talking about the English, but he's talking about how the English Parliament is going in one direction, to the right, while the Scottish Parliament is going in a different direction, to the left.
Over the same 2 decades, the Scottish Parliament has delivered free prescriptions, free tuition fees, free personal care, free bus travel, the baby box, the Scottish child payment, and world-leading climate action.
So he's once again painting the picture of the Conservative-led government in Westminster does not care about ordinary people, but the Scottish Parliament does care about ordinary people. So he's talking about issues that affect ordinary people, while he's comparing it with the Westminster Parliament, which only cares about destroying lives.
All of this has made Scotland a fairer and more equal place to live. That diverging tale of 2 parliaments has led to an inevitable conclusion. Poll after poll shows that a settled majority now believe that all decisions and that all powers should now be fully entrusted to the people of Scotland.
Okay, so I just want to go into a little bit of detail here. So in the UK, there are devolved powers and there are reserved powers. So we've heard a lot about devolved powers, so the powers that the Scottish Parliament have. I think it's also important to look at the reserved powers. So these are powers that the Scottish Parliament does not have. Now, some of them are very important, some of them are a bit more mundane. But I just want to just show you a list of them, because there is a significant number of them. And if Scotland were to become independent, these powers would reside with the Scottish Parliament, not with the UK Parliament. So, for example, currency is one that's a very topical issue at the moment. Quarantine Of course, defence. We also have issues such as financial services, elections, scientific procedures, betting, gaming, lottery. So ways of increasing the money supply, increasing revenue. Security, national security. You can see here a lot of issues here: fishing outside Scottish waters, import and export control, telecommunications, postal services. Of course, energy is a huge issue for the Scottish economy, and bringing that power under the Scottish Parliament's jurisdiction would be a huge victory for Scotland. And then we have other issues. Broadcasting, of course, broadcasting is an interesting one. The Scottish government don't have any control over broadcasting. That is controlled by Westminster. And then we have other things which are outer space and Antarctica are two other issues that are actually not devolved to Scottish Parliament. So it would be interesting to see how these are opportunities, but they're also challenges. Great challenges for an eventual Scottish Parliament. So I think it's important to look at independence. There are great opportunities for the Scottish people, but there are massive challenges as well. And I think it's important that the SNP explain how they would deal with these challenges.
Conference. That's why the Tories are in a panic. They are unwilling to accept the truth that
Sorry, just like the little image there with the birds flying.
Majority of Scotland's people now want an independent future. Instead of listening to the will of the Scottish people, the Tories are attempting to deny democracy and to destroy devolution.
Now, I think it's interesting he's focusing on the Tories here and not on the parties in the south. So he's focusing mainly on the Tories, because he's not talking about Keir Starmer, he's not talking about the Labour Party. Of course, they're not in power, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to talk about them. But he is focusing on the Tories because the Tories are extremely unpopular. Now, the Labour Party are not very popular in Scotland either, but the Tories are extremely unpopular. And Boris Johnson, of course, is probably the least popular person in Scotland at the moment.
The Tories are trying to provoke us, and their tactics are becoming more desperate by the day. But let me tell you, it won't work. We will remain calm, clear-headed and confident, because we are wise enough to know that what ultimately happens to those who rage against democracy, we only need to look across the Atlantic to see. Democracy deniers are destined for only one thing: defeat.
So it's very colourful language, of course, and this is typical of Ian Blackford. But I think it's interesting also the background here, and I'm talking about the physical background. He's from the Isle of Skye, and I think he's trying to demonstrate, this is typical of Scotland. This is Scotland. This is the Scotland of fantasy stories. This is the Scotland that people think about, and I think this is part of the narrative here. Let's return to the way things used to be. Let's have our own nation. Let's be independent in a sense. So I think it was an interesting speech. As I said before, there are a lot of opportunities for Scotland if it becomes independent, but there are, of course, a lot of challenges. And I think it's important that those who support independence talk about those challenges, because I think it's important that the Scottish people understand that while I believe independence is in their interest, there are challenges ahead. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.